Hello everyone and welcome back. I'll be honest, I did not think I'd be making a dedicated video about this thing when I bought it. As many of you know, on this channel I make videos about photography and filmmaking, and oftentimes that involves my wife Jillian and I traveling, hiking, and spending a lot of time outdoors doing our best to find interesting scenery. Last year we needed to add another camera to our lineup, something more portable and convenient, but still powerful. And after a bit of research, we landed on the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. But I never expected for it to become such a staple piece in my kit, not just for YouTube, but even on the client work side in some cases. All of the footage from the intro and throughout this video was shot on the Pocket, besides of course the shots of the device itself. With the proper settings, exposure, and some knowledge of color grading, you can really push this thing much farther than I originally thought into cinematic territory. In this video, I'll break down all the settings I use and share some tips on how to approach filming with this camera to get the most out of it. When I get my hands on any camera for the first time, I put it through a series of tests and try all the recording options, formats, and settings. There's not a ton to cover here with how simplified this device is, so I'll just throw my settings on screen here and you can see them for yourself instead of me walking you through them. That would be incredibly boring. Once these are set, they really don't get changed much except for a few rare instances, like manually setting ISO for scenes where somewhere around -0.3 on the meter isn't what you want. For example, during sunset or sunrise when you want to retain the most highlight detail possible. Speaking of ISO, I usually don't like to go above 1600 and stay at 800 or lower whenever possible. Because of this relatively small sensor, it tends to struggle a bit in low light conditions and gets noisy pretty quickly at values higher than this. One other key takeaway here is that because we're keeping the shutter at double our frame rate to maintain proper motion blur in our image, you'll need to have a set of ND filters with you in order to not overexpose your footage a lot of the time. I use a set of solid filters varying in strengths for this, ranging from ND8 to ND64. We previously tried a few variable ND options and they all had too many negative side effects like corner darkening and color shifting, so I'd just be careful if you go that route. Your goal with this approach is to use the strength of ND that gets your exposure for the scene around -0.3 while still at the lowest possible ISO, ideally at base value of 50 or close to it. This set in particular is great because they're slim enough to leave on even when you turn the device off. A bunch of them don't allow this because they're too thick, including the official DJI ones actually, which is a headache to deal with considering how often you're turning this thing on and off. If you want to take it a step further and get really precise with your exposure and know exactly what's clipping in your scene, you can use the DJI Mimo app. It allows you to connect to your camera directly from your phone and gives you a few extra tools to use, like showing zebras, also known as overexposure warning, and a histogram. I really wish you could enable these features directly on the device screen as well. DJI, if you're listening, please add this in. And while you're at it, I'm absolutely begging you to please add an invert Y-axis option for the joystick. I've spent way too many hours of my life playing video games with the invert on, so using the joystick on the Pocket just does not work with my brain. I would be so thankful for this option. You can also use this app for remote recording and control, which is awesome because sometimes the camera itself is out of reach or out of your line of sight, so you can dial your shot in from anywhere. It's also a much larger view of your image, which can be really nice at times. After working with this camera for some time now, I've been able to develop a color grading workflow that makes it pretty easy to match the footage colors, look, and feel with higher end cameras from other manufacturers, like my Sony a7S III and even the Fujifilm GFX and X series log files. Color grading is a very deep topic that I don't have time to dive fully into here today, but just know that I grade everything in DaVinci Resolve, and if you like the look, I'm in the process of developing this workflow into a LUT system that will include support for all of the cameras I just mentioned. If you don't want to miss the launch of that when it's finished, there's a link in the description of this video to sign up for my newsletter, so you'll be the first to know when it drops. There are quite a few unique functions in the menu and a couple that you don't want to miss. Don't overlook these gimbal modes. They change the way the gimbal responds to your movements, allowing you to do things like keep the horizon from tilting or enabling full gimbal rotation for creative or FPV type shots. Also, I didn't know this for almost a year, but if you click and hold the joystick itself in, it locks the gimbal temporarily until you let it go. Super handy for doing things like a push in when you don't want to accidentally rotate the camera. It's important that you understand the different options for focusing and when to choose what. The most relevant example in my use case is when I'm shooting a landscape or static scene. I'll often switch this to single mode, allowing me to tap on the screen on an area that I want to focus on, and it will lock the focus to that distance. It will not track a person or any other moving object in the scene. The advantage here is that you won't have any autofocus hunting or pulsing in your shot. Just don't forget to turn this back to continuous once you're on the move again. As far as audio is concerned, if you have the microphone that comes with the creator bundle, do yourself a favor and read up on the 32-bit float recording, which, if you haven't heard of this before, is an absolute game changer. It basically keeps you from clipping your audio on accident, and using it is pretty simple. There is a menu option for enabling this feature, so just make sure to turn that on. Oh, and one last thing in the settings, if you're like me and you want to letterbox crop your footage in post-production, you can scroll down here and turn on the reference line option for 2.35:1. This displays the guidelines on the screen so you can see what your final composition will look like in post-production after you crop. I'd encourage you to really push your creativity with this camera and try out angles and techniques that you might not have attempted with a larger setup. Things like throwing it onto an extension pole for a higher angle, or using a clamp to attach it to an object in your scene for an immersive perspective. If you combine these things with some of the functions like the spin shot or the auto tracking features in camera, you can get some visually interesting results that would normally take a lot more gear to pull off. I'll link to some accessories that I use with it in the description below if you're interested, including the bag that I use to carry this and my everyday photo camera around, which has been a great lightweight solution for traveling. I think that's everything to get you pointed in the right direction for achieving cinematic results with the Pocket 3. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you have any other questions, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer it. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, I would really appreciate your support. It helps me out more than you know. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.